Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Broken Meeple. I'm Luke Hector, and remember, as always, if you like what you see, please remember to leave a comment and a like. It means the world to me to know that you appreciate the content that I spend the time putting out. Also, don't forget that there's a little Patreon campaign if you want to support the channel even further. Thank you for joining me for another segment of the Top 100 at night time, as you might have guessed from the extra lighting that's required. Remember, I don't have a purpose-built studio for these type of things. You know, budget, space, UK, you name it, there's reasons for it. But this is going to be a good, fun segment though, in fact, because the last 30 has generally been mostly things that have just dropped from above with like the occasional new game or returning game. This one's going to be a lot more interesting though, because we've got a few movers and shakers in here, but we've also got 3 debuts. So 3 new games that you've not had on the top 100 before. Some you have seen behind me at all times, some you have not. Some I've even reviewed on a recent basis as well. So yep, we're definitely chiming into something a little bit more interesting this time round. Well, I like to hope they're all interesting, but I think out of my 100, I think this is going to be a pretty good, interesting segment. And yeah, sorry about the autofocus thing before. Yeah, there's a little setting you have to do on the camera. Like, you gotta try and set it so it focuses on the middle. If you make it focus on the landscape, it tries too hard to put everything in focus, which is why I blurred out a bit last time. So hopefully no more issues here. Anyway, without further ado,
get on with it.
Number 70 has only dropped 2 places, so this one's been pretty constant from AEG and Mr. John DeClaire. John DeClaire is making a name for himself now with some new Kickstarters that have come out, and certainly a recent Kickstarter for an expansion to a game I quite like. But this is one of the original games where it's like, oh, hello, who's this John guy? You know, this isn't when I started noticing him, and that's Mystic Vale. I love twists when it comes to deck building. Now, technically, it's kind of a deck builder, but it's more a card builder. The idea with Mystic Vale is that it's a game where the theme is kind of generic fantasy, druid style, but the idea is that rather than building, like putting cards into your deck as you play a normal deck builder, you instead have a flat set of 20 cards, some of them starter, some of them complete blank, all in sleeves. And as you play each round, you put new advancements into the sleeves of these cards and basically create your own 3-tier level cards and create your own combos and try to get victory points and such and such. It's a unique twist on a genre that has, you know, like I say, I love deck building, but it has been bloated with a lot of like entries, and there's a lot of bad ones as well as a lot of good ones. This one though was a breath of fresh air. It's like, oh, no one's really tried this before. Nice. And I got sucked into it. Granted, it's a bit long with 3 or 4 players, but the recent expansion, Conclave, has an Equinox mode in there where you can play 2 turns simultaneously. That's pretty cool, and that actually sorts out the problem with 3 and 4 player. But even just the app for this is fantastic. Get it on Steam, Android, or Apple, I believe, and it's solid, but it looks gorgeous. It brought about a new sense of innovation in some games, and obviously we've now got, well, I don't want to spoil because there's other games that use the system, and I don't want to spoil too much for later. But yeah, Mystic Vale, still pretty consistent. It's consistently awesome. Mystic Vale, 70. And we get on to the first debut. 69 is brand new to this list. I don't think I've done an official review for this game. I have talked about it on like games I've acquired, but never did a full review because it came out supposedly in 2019, although I only really saw it like appear last year, but I never got a chance to actually buy it and decide, oh, you know what, this is a really cool game, I really like this, until earlier this year. This is Burnt Island Games In the Hall of the Mountain King. You will have seen that I did a preview video on Fall of the Mountain King, which is the sequel that was on Kickstarter, and yes, I backed it, but I like this game so much that not only is it in my top 100, I also backed the extra upgrades that I don't have for my retail copy in the other room. So I'm going to get those cool Kickstarter statues and all the other bits and bobs that I missed out on before. But this was a surprise to me, because I wasn't certain if I was gonna like it. I mean, I thought it looks good on the table, but it's a mix of a lot of mechanics here, and am I really going to care about some resource mechanic where you're building a pyramid? Although, granted, there's a couple of games I've got which use that kind of thing. In fact, you're going to hear about one fairly soon. But I thought, okay, well, let's go into this. I've bought it, learned the rules. Didn't take very long, apparently. The setup takes a while, but the rules are actually pretty straightforward for the most part for a medium weight game. but this was really good fun. The polyominoes of building up the tunnels is cool, getting the resources and managing that is fun, and that resource system of the cascading pyramid is actually pretty cool. The idea that you've got these trolls that get you different things, and you decide, right, you know what, this round I'm going to have this troll, and I'm going to put it on top of these 2 cards, and then I get the resources of that troll and the ones below it. But you have to spend the resources, otherwise the trolls don't produce them, so you've got to try and get the resources when you need them, spend them, and then preferably before you get another troll, spend everything you have, otherwise you let stuff go to waste. There's a lot of different ways that you can approach what you're going to do, because there's all sorts of different resources, all of which are useful, and I particularly like the magic cards. Free magic cards where you have a special power that everybody can trigger on the start of their turn, but after 3 uses the card goes away and gets replaced with another one. So not only do you have different powers turning up at different times, which affects how powerful they are, but it's that kind of push your luck thing of, I probably would like to use that power at some point, but I'm not quite ready. Can I survive 2 more rounds before people trigger it? And as more and more people sort of go, I think I'll use that power, it's like it gets quite tense. But for a medium weight game, it's quite thinky, but the rules were pretty good. It's a good rule book. You realise that there's only really 4 steps to a turn, most of which happens in step 2, and once you've got the rules down, you realise, wow, it's actually pretty smooth, pretty elegant. I just wish it didn't take quite as long to set up as it does. Certainly, I think this game could benefit from an insert, I don't mean like you got to do game trays or anything, but folded space, if you're watching, in the Hole in the Mountain key, please. That would be really good to get a speedy setup insert for this. In fact, actually, did the Kickstarter upgrades have a speedy insert? I think it did, actually. Oh, in which case, something else to look forward to. But yeah, debuting at 69, could it go higher? We'll have to see. And it'll be interesting to see whether Fall of the Mountain King can get into my top 100 as well. But yeah, solid game. Thank you, viewers, because you kept banging on at me to play this game. Finally, I did, and you were right. My number 68 has also only dropped 2 places, a bit like my 70. Yeah, don't worry, we'll get some big movers in a minute. But this is the favourite of the fabled T games. And by T, I mean the fact that Board and Dice want to call every single game they make beginning with T. And I think, well, we're moving on to another letter soon. I can't remember, like Z or something. But this is Teotihuacan, City of Gods. This one is definitely my favourite of the lot. So yeah, Tekenu, I can't remember where Tekenu ended up. I think it was like my 101 or 102. It like barely missed the list. But I really like that one too. The Teotihuacan is the one that I like the most. The rondel mechanic is really cool, where you've got all these different layouts that you can have for the buildings, all the different technologies that you can grab, but multiple paths to victory. You know, which of the 3 or even now 4 pyramids do I want to level up? Do I want to focus on resource gathering? Do I want to focus on the buildings? Do I want to build up the giant pyramid, or do I not care about building the pyramid, I just want to put the decorations on it? There's a lot of cool different paths to victory that you can take, but you've constantly got to fight the idea that you've got these dice that move around and they've got different power levels, and it's like, I really could do with leveling up these dice, but if I level them up too fast, they get ascended, which is good, but then they also revert back down to power 1 again. That's a bit annoying. The technologies offer different paths as well, and my god, I mean, I love coffee, I love cocoa, but man, do I hate the stuff after playing this game. Whenever you land on players, on spaces, you have to basically pay up cocoa for, you know, depending on how many different players are there, and you constantly never seem to have enough cocoa. Although, thematically, this game is, yeah, pretty abstract. I mean, granted, it's got a nice cool pyramid, and I love the Inca style, but yeah, this is a pretty weird abstracted game. I mean, the idea that when you get to these different spaces you need to pay cocoa for different players is kind of odd. You know, it's like, hey, I've come to help build the pyramid, guys. Oh, there's 4 of you here. I didn't bring enough food for everybody. It just kind of seems a little bit weird, but the mechanics are still great fun. It's quite a heavy game. There's quite a lot of rules to learn, and the solo mode is probably a little bit too complex for my liking. But, you know, it's overall a really solid multiplayer game, and I just love the amount of variety I've got. In fact, there's so much variety in the game with, I think, the first 2 expansions that I haven't actually bought the last expansion, because frankly, I don't think I need it. You know, maybe there's 1 or 2 modules I might like, but honestly, that box is tightly packed with stuff. I can't fit another expansion in there. I would have to have 2 boxes, and you know how much I hate having 2 boxes for a game. But yeah, you know, I don't know. Let me know in the comments. What do you think of the last expansion if you've got it? Is it really worth me getting when I've got everything already and I only get the game played every now and again? Let me know. I'll be interested. But How on earth are you storing it all in one box is what I want to know. So yeah, 68 remaining consistent, just like my 70. Teotihuacan. Hope I pronounced it right. Right, let's get on to a big shaker here. My 67 has dropped from 35. 32 places. It's not because I hate the game. Remember, every single game on my top 100, or top 200 in fact, I love, okay? It's still a really cool game. It's just that maybe when I first played it, I was like, oh yeah, really, really loving this. And now I'm like, yeah, I still really enjoy it, but I play it every now and again, and I do wish it had a better storage solution, and that is this little tin right here. In fact, why don't I just pull it off the shelf, a little bit of show and tell for this one. There you go, Abyss Conspiracy. This is a great little filler from Bombix using the same gorgeous artwork as Abyss, but it is a pretty abstracted game, and remember what I said about pyramid building? Well, I kind of had this one in mind when I was talking about it. This one is a straight up filler. You basically draw cards from a deck with all the lords that you have, and they've got different points and special powers, and you're building an upside down pyramid, basically your council, and you're trying to collect sets of all the different lords. You're trying to collect like a big group of the same color. You're trying to get keys so they open locations with other scoring opportunities. It's very simple, and it's all based around the mechanic that Abyss utilizes, which is the more choice you give yourself, the more options you give the opponent. You can look up to up to 3 cards off the Lord deck when you take your turn, but the problem is the one that you don't, you can only choose one. So the ones that you don't pick have to go face up, and people can decide, you know, I'm just going to take up the face up discard pile, and it could be several of the same color there, which is great for grouping, but it also accelerates them through the game, because the game end is when the first player builds a pyramid, not when everybody does. So you give them too many options, you might just shoot yourself in the foot a little bit, and it's a cool little system. It's a little bit of push your luck mixed with a bit of like, you know, what am I going to use these cards for? But it's quick. I mean, you can get a 4-player game of this done in 15-20 minutes. I mean, the first time I played this was, I think last year, well, year before, Essen, where somebody from Bombix, I forget his name, a French guy, and, you know, English was clearly not his first language, but he taught me the game, and we played through a whole round of it and scored up in 15 minutes, including the teach, 2 of us. Wow, that was pretty good going, and from that point I thought, yeah, you know what, I need this little filler. It feels like it should be a more involved game, but yet it only takes about 15-20 minutes. It's really cool, and not to mention it's probably one of the most beautiful fillers you will ever see. The artwork is so gorgeous. But yeah, I love the Abyss universe. I would happily have more games in this system, and yeah, one of the most beautiful fillers ever at 67. Conspiracy Abyss universe, as if anybody cares about the tagline. Number 66 has dropped 23 places from 43. This is a Mind Clash game, and it's clear. Well, will there be other Mind Clash games on the list? You'll have to see, although some of you have probably already got the answer to that. But this is my 3rd favourite of the games that they've done, which, considering they've only technically made 3.5, they've essentially made 3 plus a small card game. The other one's on Kickstarter, that doesn't count yet. You know, that's not exactly saying much, but these games are just fantastic heavy Euros. It's my 3rd favourite, okay, spoiler alert, but it's Cerebria, the Inside World, or as I like to call it, Inside Out, the board game, as in the Pixar movie, which is vastly underrated. Seriously, you need to watch that film if you want to shed a tear or two. But it's a really cool game where you are teamed up with a partner, or you can do 1v1, against, like, you're playing one side of the emotions. So one player is playing all the happy, positive stuff, and one player is playing all the negative stuff. Or it can be 2v2, or with the expansion you can have 3v3, or, you know, 3 players against all, with one player playing like a balanced faction. There's a lot of different ways that you can tailor the game, but the idea is that you play these different emotion cards on this big board in order to control different areas, which can get you discounts on various abilities, special powers, and there's a huge deck of these great emotions that you have already, but then you can unlock greater emotions, which are kind of like, I always contrast it to something like Pokemon, where it's like, who's that Pokemon? And suddenly your emotion is this greater version that's really powerful. On top of that, your player board has got multiple different ways that you can level up and become more powerful in different areas. You won't be able to do it all, but you'll have to sort of go, well, am I going to be really fast? Am I going to be able to summon cards quick? Can I even unlock the greater emotions? What am I doing here? And player powers, there's a lot of stuff in this game. It's pretty heavy going, But when you get going, the rules sort of kind of streamline themselves. There's a lot of front-loading information, but when you're playing, it goes relatively smooth, and I like the idea that you've got your partner where you can discuss your plan and strategy, even though the other players can hear what you're doing. It looks gorgeous, it's got those beautiful painted miniatures, which I love. I don't have to paint the wretched things, and I love playing most of the emotions in there, although people seem to try and pigeonhole me into the negative ones. What are they trying to tell me there? But yeah, really cool heavy game. It doesn't get enough buzz. Sadly, I keep seeing it on discount sales. Honestly, it's a bit of a learning curve. It's a lot to get into, but it's worth it. Cerebria at 66. Okay, 65, we have the second debut on this list, and to be honest, had I played it probably about a month earlier, it probably could have made last year's top 100. I already mentioned I like deduction games. I'm not entirely certain if this is my favourite deduction game. I'd have to look ahead, but I'm not going to because that'll delay things. But this is Renegade Games' The Search for Planet X. Okay, whatever title. But this is a straight up logic deduction game where, well, I just said it. You're trying to find Planet X.
Wait a minute. I think I've got it. I'll just bet that if we follow those planets, we'll find Planet X.
You've got this Rondell space board where they're split up into different segments, and the segments have things like asteroids and suns and moons and stuff like that. And each one has a logic rule as to where they can and can't be. You are taking it in turns to move around this Rondell kind of Tokaido style, where the person at the back moves first, and different actions take more time, with the assistance of an app, which essentially gets you to look at different segments and decide, is there an asteroid in this one? Yes or no, and it tells you a little bit, well, if an asteroid is there, that means that can't be an asteroid because they've all got to be in a group. Let me think. You can find out rules and other logic rules that are part of the game, like, you know, you can't have a nebula next to a sun, that kind of thing. And basically you're trying to race the other players to find out exactly where it is and what's next door to it. Now, it's a bit on the multiplayer solitaire side. I mean, yes, you have that middle bit where you're putting in the theories, a bit like an alchemist, where I reckon there's something in this one, and you're trying to race people to that. But other than that, you're kind of just playing your own game and racing others to figure it out first. I prefer to play this solo, in fact. Annoyingly, they didn't put it in the rulebook, but you can go to the website and find the solo bot app and rules. And basically, I like doing that because I still have to figure out this puzzle, but you're trying to do it against the bot, which is gaining points by other means. It's a really solid deduction game, never gets enough buzz. It came out with barely any fanfare, I don't think that helped. And granted, it's not the biggest looker in the world, it's really more down to the simplicity of the app along with that fun gameplay nature of deduction games, which I really like. It's a cool one. It's definitely worth checking out if you can find it, providing that you are comfortable with the idea of using an app, which of course I am, but I know a lot of people aren't. So was that 65, The Search for Planet X? My number 64, down 5 places. Again, pretty consistent for the most part, this list. In fact, no, the other two haven't dropped that far either, so this is more consistent. And I think we're going to find this with, well, of course we're going to find this with the top of the list because games have only got so far to drop. But definitely when we get into like the top sort of 50, 60 games, it's harder for them to like fall off my list unless I really am starting to get like, oh, they're not standing the test of time. This one is, well, nearly lost my place there. Oh god, yeah, this is like Harry Potter, the heavy Euro game. It really is all about that magic theme and the Dean University of Magic, where you've got spells and mana and like amulets and potions and different wizards, all of which have different abilities. It's a heavy smorgasbord of effects and chaos. It's Argent the Consortium, and I love it. It's level 99's probably best game, I think, in my opinion, that I like. And yeah, it's a bit of a brain burner. It's wonderfully chaotic for a heavy Euro game. It's even got a pretty unique system of winning. It's basically the dean's gone mysteriously disappeared, like all deans of magic schools do, and you're trying to, alright, I want to be the next dean. You're trying to get the vote of the council to say, yes, you can be it, but each game, it's made up of different members and they have different ways of voting. Some want you to have the most supporters of the fire school, one wants you to have the most mana, the most money, the most spells learned of earth, you know, that kind of thing. And I don't know if it's earth, fire, wind, water, like Captain Planet.
I'll turn you into a f***ing tree.
I think I'm just trying to say, like, it's different schools of magic. but you have got all these different rooms with different worker placement spaces that you can go. You're popping your wizards down to pull off these effects, like find out what the council's doing, collect the artifacts, collect the potions, trigger effects. But all the wizards are different colors, and the different colors have different abilities. Red ones zap people off the board. The blue ones can't. The green ones can't be targeted. The blue ones can. I don't know. I think the purple ones can shift around all over the place. I don't know. It's been a while since I played it, but basically there's a lot going on, and you can really dick people over in this game. So you've got to be comfortable with things just going completely out of control at times, or you getting screwed over because, well, one of your color mages is designed to do exactly that. But wow, for someone like me who loves like variety as the spice of life, this is certainly one where you've just got so many different ways to tailor the game, so many different rooms with A and B size, and then you've got the characters, special powers, and then the expansion added in an orange like school or technomancy or whatever it was called, so I got even more magic spells. I love just being able to sort of go, you know what, I'm gonna grab the tornado, like the wind spell. Okay, so I can do a stiff breeze, bit of a gale. Oh, I can now summon a tornado in this room and shut the entire thing down while blowing everybody to the nearby rooms. It's like, you can pull off some crazy things in this game, and that's why I love it. Variety with a strong theme, a unique path to victory. If anything, the only reason it doesn't stay higher on the list is just because it is a bit of a front-loaded game of rules, quite heavy, and maybe it could do with a little bit of streamlining, but as I say, when it does hit the table, usually at conventions, it's a blast. In some cases, quite literally. Argent the Consortium. Number 63 has dropped 12 places. That's not particularly far, and I think it's mainly just because, well, firstly, it's difficult to get to the table, because when I do, I basically have to play it all the way through the campaign. And also, I have to admit, I have house ruled a couple of things in this game because the original design is a little flawed, even though I adore the theme and story in this, and that is Tainted Grail, the Fall of Avalon from Awakened Realms. I think this is probably the first game I played from Awakened Realms, actually, because I don't think I played Nemesis until after this one. But I don't know, does this War of Mine count? Technically that's Galactica game, so anyway, I digress. But Tainted Grail is one of the best story world settings for any campaign game I have played. Forget Descent, forget Gloomhaven, forget a lot of these other campaign games, forget Imperial Assault, even forget the Ryan Lockett campaigns like Sleeping Gods and that. If you want the best story world, like the best story within the best world, Tainted Grail is the one. A dark, graphic gothic style look at the Arthurian legends. So you've got like Lancelot and Arthur and that kind of in the lore, but especially for the original campaign, like the world's kind of gone to pot. There's like darkness everywhere. These menhirs are keeping people like barely alive, and yes, that's one of the things I have to house rule, those menhirs. It's a bit of a grind to keep those things in check. House rule them to make the game a little bit easier and you'll have a much better time. But it's such a good story. You play through as just a complete nobody. It's like, oh, you had a message that you need to go check out on this expedition. Okay, let me go. And then it all just spirals out of control there. But you've got different characters that you can play. You've got all the world to explore. It looks gorgeous. I love the artwork in this game and even the production quality of like the cards, these tarot cards that build a map. Oh, it looks so good. But even when I got past the original campaign, I've played through the next campaign. What's it called? The Last Night, I think it's called. Or is that a Batman film? I can't remember. But the idea is that on that one, it's a frozen wasteland, and so you know, you're walking through this world and you're finding out stuff that you remember from the previous campaign and some new stuff as well, but you're dealing with frostbite and like freezing to death, and everything's like you thought it'd gone to pot before, now it's really gone to pot. But again, a really cool campaign with a fun, interesting story. I have yet to play through the third campaign from the Kickstarter, which I believe has you in the past, like a prequel, and you can command armies and stuff. Looking forward to that, but of course, it has to hit the table and stay there for a long time. It is a bit of a table hog, and it is effectively a campaign game, and I'm not a big fan of putting together like a campaign game, going, alright, let me just save, pack away, that goes in that box, that goes in that box, and alright, okay, it's packed away, then you go away, and then you have to go, right, let me get it all out again, there's that box, and there was that map, I hate saving in the middle of a campaign. I want to play the campaign from start to finish. Chapter 1, done. Leave it on the table, go away, come back, it's already set up. The problem is, you need a spare table. And as much as I have a kitchen table and my Geekison table, that's easier said than done, especially as you imagine my Blitz videos have to record that table when it doesn't have stuff on it. So it's a bit of a mission, but love it. It's easily, I think, my favorite campaign game I have on this list. In fact, yep, that is, well, I don't know, is that a campaign game? I suppose there is one that slightly cheats with that later. Oh no, there is a couple more. All right, forget that. I think mechanically, it's not necessarily my favorite campaign game ever, but certainly in terms of its theme and world setting, it's definitely up there, if not my favorite. Tainted Grail, number 63. Well, if you thought that was interesting, check out my 62. It's the third debut on this list, and one of the most recent games I've reviewed. In fact, I got a feeling this is the... Oh no, I did Runestones as a more recent detail review. I think it's the one I did before. Osprey Games sent me a bunch of their games, and I was very glad to have them and review them all. And this one was a bit of a surprise for me. I wasn't certain if I was going to like it or not. You know, a deck builder with a civilization theme. It was a very divisive looking artwork. The components were a bit shoddy. It was certainly a bit of a long game for what it was, and a smorgasbord of rules in not the best rulebook ever. So it's got some flaws. But gameplay, Imperium is sound. It really is a good, fun deck builder. It would be so much higher on this list if it was just a bit more streamlined and a little bit more like easier to set up in that, because the setup and takedown does take a fair while. There's stuff on BoardGameGeek where even the designer has come out and said, here's ways to shorten the game. I'm going to do some research on that because frankly, I think I kind of need to do that. But this game is a really interesting one where you take a civilization like the Celts or the Romans or the Byzantians, that kind of thing, and in another set you've got like the Arthurians and the Atlanteans and the Vikings and stuff. And the idea is that you play through a deck building game where you've got your basic deck and some development cards and some upgraded cards that you can get, as well as a communal display of cards. But the idea is that you're trying to use your deck's faction sort of special advantages to go through and get the upgraded cards that you have, possibly become an empire from a barbarian nation, and then decide, well, am I going to develop my whole deck to end the game, or am I going to go after this fame deck? It depends, but every faction plays really differently, and that's one of the best things I love about this game. It may be a bit of a slog to try and get the rules down. It certainly is a bit of a slog to set up and take down, but when you're playing a game, there is a lot of meaningful choices to which cards you use, some of which have like multiple use and that, and the idea being that each faction just really does feel unique. If I play the Romans, I feel like I'm doing something very different from the Celts, and certainly something very different from something like the Arthurians, in which them and some other nations have their own victory condition for ending the game. Like the Arthurians have to go find the Grail. Okay, cool. So while I'm doing that, the Celts over there are actually like farming Celtic gold and nicking my stuff and that. It's one of the most thematic deck builders I've played, but thematic from a history standpoint. Some cards to have effects, which makes sense if you know anything about the history of the character or the area or whatever it's portraying. And granted, I'm not exactly a history buff, so some of it does go a little bit over my head, but when you read up on this stuff, it's actually pretty interesting. But even if you just take historical knowledge aside, you can tell that the factions feel thematically different and thematically unique, and the gameplay and the deck building is just really good. I still stand by the 8 out of 10 I gave it though, because I say that the gameplay of this is like 9 out of 10 material. Like the gameplay is great fun, but I can't overlook that it takes a while to set up and all those other flaws I mentioned in the Imperium review. Go check it out if you want to find out more detail. But for someone like me who is only going to play this game solo, I can get it as high as this on the list. Maybe with those rules to shorten it, maybe if I can find some other ways to house rule, speeding it up a little bit, then perhaps this could go higher. I mean, I was struggling to think, can I break into the top 50 with this game? But not quite, not based on that review. So we'll see how Imperium does. But well done, Mr. Buckle and Turksy. This was a really solid, and if I dare say, innovative look on deck building. Imperium at 62. And finally, for 61, down 7 places, is a sequel, shall we say, a pseudo-sequel to another great game called Citadels. This one is from Fantasy Flight Games, but it takes the whole role selection that Citadels did and kind of adds an area control mechanism into it, and that is Mission Red Planet, the 2nd edition, although to be honest I don't think you can even physically find the first edition anymore, and I only ever played the second. This is a really streamlined game that works with 6 players. You don't get many of those. This is one of those games that I like to pull out when I've got 5 or 6 players. I'm like, oh, when am I going to play with this many? It's like, ooh, you know, this can work, because it's a very straightforward thing. Each of you has the same 9 action-like character cards. You simultaneously pick one, and then you go in order from 9 to 1, resolving the characters. And then there's a little bit of stuff with the planet, and then you go again. It just plays out very smoothly. The turns are relatively quick, and before you realise it, it's like, oh, right, I gotta get some more resources, but I'll be able to soon. It's like, wait a minute, the game ends in 2 rounds? Yikes! Before you know it, the game's about to end, but in a good way, because you want to play it again. And you could feasibly do 2 of these in a row and still get it done within a good 2 hours or so. But, well, depending on the players, I'd say this is kind of somewhere between 60 to 90 minutes, depending on the player count and the players involved. But it looks great with all those little mini astronauts on the table. There's a little bit of dickery in this, you know, like, I'm gonna go in this spaceship. Well, boom! You know, it's like it takes off and explodes because of the saboteur. Or worse one, I hate getting caught out by this one. You know, I love being the person who does it though, where you're thinking, right, yep, let's all budge in. Yep, we're going to Disney World. It's like, nope, you're going into the sun. It's like, no! It's like, as you change the pilot trajectory. There are some fun things that you can do with this, but other than that, it's role selection, which I really like. It's area control, which is good fun, but not in a like really complicated way. The rules are streamlined, it looks gorgeous, I can teach this in no time at all, and frankly, we can play it in almost no time at all. And it scales pretty well from 3 to 6 players, I find, although I'd say 4 to 6 is probably better, but still does a good job. So, Mission Red Planet, down 7 places. I don't think it's ever hit my top 50 to my knowledge. Maybe it did in 1 year, but like I say, still consistently a really good game, and definitely one that would be a top recommendation for if you're trying to cater for 5 to 6 players and you're struggling at this point. Whew, and tired again. Yep, another set of 10 done. On the next set of 10, you've only got 1 debut, but you've got some more consistent games there, ones that you will have seen before, but the question is, have they fallen? Have they risen, in fact? But what's the new game that's potentially, that fell short of the top 50? As I say, I still enjoy doing these despite how tiring they are, and your responses and comments on the previous 3 that I've done have been fantastic. I've never seen it get so much buzz before. I mean, the views have been higher in the past, but still, the amount of comments and the amount of thumbs up are definitely a lot better than they were before. You know, I'm glad I decided to do it this way and not do the live stream for some of these. You know, it's a lot of work, and I suspect this will probably have to go into a little bit of early October by the time I'm done, but as I say, trying to do these as quick as I can. So, yeah. I suppose we'll get on with editing this one and work on the next 10 eventually. But thanks for being with me so far through this top 100. If you like what you see, please remember to leave a like and comment about the choices. Did you like any? Did you hate any? The ones that you've been willing to try? Let me know. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. Don't forget that the channel is sponsored by Zatu.co.uk, and if you want to check out the start of this top 100, you can check out the starting video here. Or if you want something a little bit different, I did a preview of 11 by Portal recently, the football manager game, that you can check out here. So take care, and remember, as always, it's only a game. Bye for now, and see you next time.